So welcome everyone. It's December 16th.
15th.
No, it's the 15th.
It's 16th for some of us.
Oh, tomorrow. I'm just thinking of my birthday tomorrow. So welcome. It's December 15th, and this is a Co-Creators Convergence call. I'm Noelle Marshall, and I'm here with my beloved.
Hi, this is Bob Warner.
And we're excited tonight to have our monthly call is being brought to you by two of our beautiful artists and members of the Co-Creators Convergence, Mila Popovich and Pamela Gerrand. They sang and danced and serenaded us with their beautiful beings this last year at our Co-Creators Convergence, where we all gathered in the dome in Loveland, Colorado, and it's very beautiful. And they volunteered to bring some more of their beauty to the Co-Creators Convergence. And so I'm going to let them introduce their guest. But before that, I'm going to turn it over to my beloved Bob Warner, and he's going to tell you a little bit about the Co-Creators Convergence.
Hi, everybody. We're so happy to see folks that are new to us on this call with us this evening. The Co-Creators Convergence, our community, is a group of evolutionary souls that are dedicated to bringing forth a new humanity that's envisioned by such folks as Buckminster Fuller, Barbara Marx Hubbard, and most significantly, the pure source that's in each and every one of us, that together we're creating a new humanity. And our intention is to deepen into that new humanity and into that consciousness and carry that with us wherever we travel. There are many folks on the phone tonight that are travelers, in fact. And so,
including our guest.
Including our guest. And so we know that the new time is what we all make it, individually and most importantly with our collective consciousness. So the Co-Creators Convergence has been a community since 2013, when we first gathered at Sunrise Ranch for our first convergence in person. We just completed our 4th event last summer, and we invite all of you to be a part of our Co-Creators Convergence in person at Sunrise Ranch this coming June 1st through
1 through 4.
1 through 4 of the coming year, and Loveland, outside of Loveland, Colorado. Beautiful, spiritual, intentional community, and we love sitting in circle where we recognize each of us as a leader of ourselves and a part of this collective consciousness. There are a couple of other ways you can connect with us. One, of course, is our 3rd Thursday of the month call, which is what tonight is about. We call it our reunion call, or our union call of the community. Another is our very active Facebook page for Co-Creators Convergence. You're all welcome to be a part of that. And also we have a website, which is cocreatorsconvergence.com. And there you can keep up with planned activities, got photo galleries from past events, and most significantly, we have all of our Thursday evening calls going all the way back to the beginning of 2014. We just started using Zoom this summer, and all the calls prior to that were audio calls, but all the recordings are there, and we have just been, all of us have been so blessed to have a gathering as frequently as we do on the phone and be able to sit around our collective campfire virtually. So please join us, those of you that have not been a part of Co-Creators Convergence before. That would be a union call for you, and for those of us that are a part of this community and have been, this is our Thursday reunion call. Noelle?
Very good, Bob. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to turn it over to, I believe it was Pamela is going to offer a centering for us. So I'm going to put us on mute, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you, Noelle and Bob. And it is so wonderful to be here in this community with so many beautiful, familiar faces and voices, and some new ones as well. So welcome. Welcome to this call that we're calling Awakening to Our Wilder Grace. And when Mila and I got together a month or so ago to just sit together and tune into what was being called forth for this evening, these were the words that came. The dark of December will burn brightly with these fiery muses whose magnificent mission is to awaken you to your own radiance. Catalyze the bright sparks of your creativity and unleash the wild voice of the one in every woman, man, and child upon this planet. Join CCC members Mila and Pamela, and we have with us tonight Alison Nappi, who is going to take us into the rewilding of the divine feminine, where old paradigms and concepts fall away to be rebirthed in the womb of blazing beauty, deep listening, and fiery joy. Alison will open the gates to your undefended heart with poetry, prophecy, and the pure potency of the wild woman's wily and witty ways of wonder and deep knowing. This is the new Powerology. We will hear the voicing of the new divine feminine come to be washed clean of the weariness of a tired and tarnished world and be polished by this poet prophet who carries the promise of our remembered radiance and will help bring it home to us to heal ourselves, our beloveds, and the world. So from the banner and some of the invitations, you may have seen that we were going to be joined tonight by Ingerid Esme from Norway. I send regrets from Ingerid. She is taking some deep rest right now, which is so needed. I think Ingerid really is the metaphor right now of she's gone through a huge transition with a move, and she is a wild one who supports very much with her energy. I would say in the background very fully, wouldn't you say, Mila? Nod, yes. She is here in spirit, and she just wasn't in a place to be able to join us tonight. But I know in my heart that Alison is going to give us, between the three of us, Mila and Alison and I, there's going to be a lot of wildness. And we send our love and blessings to Ingerid as she rests in Norway. And let's bring her in now as we begin this virtual Wild Woman's Council Fire. I'm in southwestern Ontario where we're snowed in right now. All schools and businesses were closed today. So everything came to a full stop. And with the blanket of snow all around, all day I've been brought into this still point where the Divine Mother, with her incredibly beautiful, exquisite snowfall and wild winds and the deep call of the wild winter winds, has brought us into this place in Canada where we, and many places in the northern United States, we have had to withdraw, to stop, to pause, to go within. So wherever you are in the world, if it's somewhere warm and sunny, and perhaps even for those of you, I know we have people who are joining us in Australia and Spain and sunny places, close your eyes to begin and withdraw into this inner temple where the silence and the stillness speaks to you, where the mother lode of deep creativity begins to rise up from the center of the earth, bubbling up through the core of the earth. Feel it rising now, bubbling up through the molten core and the crust of Gaia's earth, and permeating every watershed, ocean, and river, circulating with an energy of pure nourishment, the nurturance of the mother herself. And as it rises through the loving liquid waters that is life, feel this energy rising through the soles of your feet, rising up through your body to your heart center, opening the gates of your heart, opening wilder still to receive the blessing of all that you will experience tonight at this virtual Wild Woman Circle, where you'll be warmed, inspired, and energized to taste of your own deep creativity, courage, and compassion. Rising up through the top of your head and connecting to the cosmos, feeling this column of light. We now ask that any and all resistance be released. Any and all templates and conditioning of the old paradigm. Any lack, limitation, fear, doubt, worry, distraction, all fall away. And imagine yourself bathed in golden light. And this golden light now radiating to encompass every one of us on this Zoom call, where we are now bathed in the mother's love herself, in the song of compassion, of beauty, of harmony, of forgiveness, and of deep, unconditional love. And here we breathe deeply together to seal in this covenant that we share on this call together. Breathing out, and where you are, exhaling with me on an Om. And so we call upon the bright sparks, the radiance of this mother lode of the divine feminine. Thank you all for coming. And to you, Mila and Alison, so it is. May it be so. Aho Ashe.
It is just wonderful to of such energies and such luminous guidance that everybody's offering, even as we are online and as we are virtual. We know now the power that we possess, and we know now how we can channel the energies that there's any medium given. If in the more virtual, the more pure the conductor. So these are my words and offering that this wonderful, wide open heart space that Pamela generated for us with her gorgeous voice, with her inspired invocation, and this gathering that we felt that there is a burning, a breath and a burning spark of love within each of us around which we have gathered virtually today or tonight, wherever you're at. So I want to welcome you all and thank you all, friends and creatives and co-creators, and particularly I want to thank Bob and Noel for being extraordinary visionaries and people who I call the unique sort, the unique kinds of leaders and lovers in the world, the planetary pathfinders that they are. And they just circulate through the bloodstream of the US currently, and I wish globally, as they have been, but I want them even more present globally, as they circulate to purify and deliver the good news and the new message that is based on ancient wisdom, and yet it has a powerful futuristic vista from which they're speaking. Then I want to thank, of course, my co-host, my co-creator, and an extraordinary angelic voice and mother and partner and visionary and teacher that Pamela is. And it is my great joy to be able to join her in this moment. There are so many amazing people here already, some that I've met, some that I feel right now. So again, welcome. Most importantly, I want to send extraordinary gratitude. And it's not easy to express that gratitude to the ones that are closest to us, right? we tend to take our own family for granted. So for me, to bring in Alison tonight is an extraordinary honor, and at the same time so close to my heart that there's no distance and I don't know how to introduce her. So what I'm going to say is that I have started calling her my beautiful oracle, because indeed she is. And we, instead of sharing so many things that I expect she will be sharing about her path, about her trajectory up to this point, as well as her projects and as her vision for the future, I would want to say just a couple of things, a couple of general things that I can say. That she's a widely read poet. She has been reading people widely as well through her wildness deck that she recently created, and she's currently on a wildness tour, basically promoting her new creation, as well as gathering people around that wisdom and that vision that she has and that she has been sharing for some years now. She has been published, as far as I know, in very famous Rebel Society, but she can tell us of other places where she has been publishing, as well as her own blog. More importantly than any of that, I want to give a personal testimony of something that I've shared with her and got us both in tears of deep recognition when we met. Alison was that ember through my valley, believe it or not. And I still have in this very special book that I've kept of tracking my journey for the last couple of years, every once in a while I would print out a saying or something that would, a morsel of life that would keep me alive along that journey. And when we spoke and I showed her something that I printed in 2014 that has kept me alive till we met in 2016, it shifted both of us with deep recognition. And that's what I want to offer, even not even going into depth what she's capable of doing, but just to tell you, truly it has been my blessing to know of her work, to read her in a dark moment when the bones are rattling and you are in deep womb of uncertainty out of which everything is generated. Her words were there with me, and her power and her love and her vision were there with me. And then I invited her to be a guest in one of the gatherings that I put together and organized, which was called 100,000 Women Poets for Change, which is a global movement. And I have to tell you, whoever said that virtual means and video recordings don't work did not know what they were talking about until they heard her. Because she came through in full power. There was gasping in the audience. Awe-inspiring moment that goes beyond beauty, which I know is the sublime of the supreme. So it is my great honor, my great joy to bring Alison tonight and to, first of all, not ask her classical questions, but rather start with saying, will you share some of your words? If you want to give us a sentence, a word, a gesture of your message to the world, which is all that you are, or if you want to recite some of your lines just to initiate us and bring us in the way Pamela did, it would be the greatest gift you could possibly give.
Mother Mila, I am so honored. Pamela, everybody here, I am so, so honored to be here with you. I know that this meeting tonight was set to be many lifetimes ago. And I've been waiting a long time to sit here around this table with you and have this organic wildness experience. And a wild woman is not a girls gone wild woman. A wild woman is an alchemical vessel. All that enters her is transformed. And so the wildness deck, which is what my dear friend Mila, who absolutely activates me, turns me on. She is the one who got me on video. She is the one who got me to step out into the world and show myself, and has set forth in motion something really amazing. This deck is not just any oracle deck. It is the gritty and wild oracle deck that's designed to bring together the fragments of our humanity. This deck is about getting to the heart of you, what is underneath all the programming, what is underneath all the assumption, what is underneath all the trauma. And that is the part of my story that I'm going to share about with you tonight, that I have not shared about a great deal publicly as yet, because this is the time and this is the place for us to begin this conversation, to begin the conversation about how traumatized we are, how much we have inherited, and how our seeking of the wildness is really about seeking our original true natures, who we were before we were beaten into this unnatural shape. Because your true shape, your true wildness, your fire, your power, your divinity, it's all there. It's all there. There's just stuff between your perception and it. And that's what this deck deals with. This is a chain breaking tool. And it may emerge tonight that we pull some of these cards, but my sense is if it's all right, I would love to share something that I've written. This piece has returned today as something that wants to be heard. So I would like to begin our conversation by reading one of my pieces to you. And I call this one, Fierce and Mighty Ancient Souls Answer the Call of Wildness. You will know the ancients when you meet them. You will recognize them. They are the ones who lead by their example. They are the courageous ones. They are the furious. They are the singing ones, the ones with otherworldly eyes. The ones who make you dance in their aliveness, the ones whose faith keeps you afloat in dark womb waters. You will know the ancients when you meet them. When you hear their voices rumble through your mortal coil, you will know that they are near. When the downy hair on your forearms stand up in a salute as they enter the room. Some ancients like to make an entrance. Others slip silently through the back door. But they know you. They know that you are there. Some come wrapped in furs and skins. Bones and animal heads adorn their crowns. Some wear feathers in their hair. Some come dancing in with jingling, swinging hips in waving, silky fabrics from the Orient. The ancient ones smell like campfire smoke or exotic flowers. Some smell like the sea, briny and wild with sand in the scalp. On others yet, the scent of pine needles. Some burn hot, like the lava that made the land your stick house sits upon. Even in the most gentle of ancients is something fierce and mighty. It keeps them humble. It keeps them true. It liberates the extended family from the bear trap lie and the caging of the mind. Most ancients are not so easygoing. They died brutally too many times to take the medicine they carry lightly. They do not throw their diamond tears to those who dare not weep themselves to the rivers of peace. The ancients are deities in training. They are the new gods and goddesses emerging from the primordial waters of the Red Sea. Most of them insist that they are merely human, because in fact it is true that they are, for their ancientness, their divinity is the same ancientness and divinity in you, in your heart, in your bowl of fire, in your belly. They do not wish to frighten off the children they have come to hold, to come to feed, come to love, come to help remember their original innocence and perfection. Hundreds of thousands of lifetimes over, they have died to help you now, today. The ancients are a dignified lot. They may be young or old, fat or skinny, beautiful or terrible in their appearance. They wear an invisible mantle of divine authority. They are spiritual royalty, and to them, your suffering is an insult to the kingdom to which all of us belong. It is too small for you. It is unnecessary. It is no longer needed to make you see the truth, but you insist that agitation is the only way to learn. Are you sure? What might you learn from being loved correctly just one time? What might you learn from the fields of lilac-spattered joy? What might you learn if you put down the armor, the sword, the bounty of your suffering for even just one moment? What would happen if you stripped down to your nakedness and opened your arms and your chest to the wind, to the sun? The wind remembers, the sun knows you. Wind has been the breath of life since the world was new and wildness was all there was. The ancients remember, and they follow this great out breath across time, across space. They use the sun as their North Star. You'll know the ancients when you meet them. They are the ones leading by example. Keep your eyes open, seek them out. When they show themselves to you, make your offering and see what it is they have been holding for you until this high and holy, ordinary day.
That's it. That's calling us into our true nature, and there is no turning back and there is no looking away. When you call on us, it's just like the call of grace. If you don't answer, it intensifies, and it will crash you and crack you open into your own core, into your own true nature, from birth to glory, as I say. So you give of yourself without reservation. And what you speak of in the poem is those that dare feel for all. The shamans, right? They feel for the community. They have the capacity, the stamina, spiritual stamina to take that on and to speak the truth and speak truth to power and invoke true powers and speak from a place of faith that has already looked into deep darkness, because that's the only show of faith that you can possibly have. And that's the only way you can gain true power that you can trust. And you can be ordained by the true power that you can be entrusted with. So all of this to say, you have earned all that. And not that you are ever saying that that's something that needs to be earned. You are saying it is our birthright. So I want to ask you then to tell us a little bit about your background. Give us some pointers on your pathway and tell us one of those places when you stared in the eyes of all kinds of demons or diamonds who are gifts, scary gifts. Who are some faces and phases of womanhood that you looked into and experienced to come to this place? And those places of transition and those thresholds that you had to cross over in that unreserved faith and unprecedented faith in order to get to this place.
I'm both giddy with joy and trying to figure out where to begin. So my life story, when told by me through my perception and the poetic meaning I've made of it, reads more like a supernatural fiction than what most people would think of as real life. But I have been saying for 20 years that I could never write fiction stranger than my personal experience. So one of the things I want to touch on, Mila, that you are asking about is these different phases of womanhood. And I want to kind of just bring into the conversation right now that we are vast, and we are quantum. And so it's not something that happens in a linear progression as we are taught. We are taught that, you know, the way we age physically is the way our consciousness ages, and that is untrue. Especially when you throw trauma into the mix. And so I think a big part of the basis of my story that I absolutely could not deny and would be remiss to leave out is I was the poster girl for trauma. Because I was a natural medium, which was unheard of, unknown, and unspoken about. I went through a traumatic injury when I was 3 years old and had to have a surgery. Many years later, I came to have access to the memory of what happened while I was out of my body. And I'm not even talking about the cutting and the sewing. I am talking about sort of the underlying nature of some of the forces that were present in that started this whole shebang. You know, I like to sometimes say that I've come through the dark door. And every single man, woman, and child I know on this planet who is of a soul tribe that is here in service to the One Love, to assist in elevation of consciousness, presence, and manifestation here, has gone through the hell condition. Deep, long, viscerally, and dangerously. Awakening is a dangerous process. There are stages in that process in which there is true danger, during which time enormous grace is in play. Because we are destined to be seen through. We are destined to be victorious. We are not attempting to take over anything that is not naturally ours. We are attempting to recognize ourselves. We have given ourselves away. We are trained immediately from our first experiences after birth to feel powerless, to bond unnaturally, to experience pain early in life, and this is not an attack on parents. This is how our culture sets things up. There are real biological programming things in play here. That's not some great conspiracy theory. It's just the way the body develops. The body-mind complex has its own intelligence, is an animal that is intelligent by itself. It is informed by many generations of animals that came before it, that learned things they should fear, how they can survive, what they need to do, right? And so there's an intelligence system in the body. And this is, by the time most people are out of high school, they are settled into what I would call sort of the animal self. There's a higher mind function. There's awareness of self and body. There's awareness of where I end and others begin, and all of that. And then there's a segment of the population who I like to say, we come in through the top down. A lot of times trauma is the thing, that causes this dramatic ripping process that happens, because that is the intelligence of the body-mind complex that it has inherited from its ancestry on how to deal with emergencies in order to survive, and it has its consequences. And so, a woman has many women in her, right? And we've seen some famous writers writing about this, right? How there are multitudes of women in us. radiance. You know, as an oracle, it takes on a whole new meaning. But my message about this particular element is it is not a linear process. I have so many women who come to me because I am a professional consultant and spiritual writers coach. I help people who have received ordinances from their higher power and have messages to disseminate, learn how to communicate those messages in a way that is not only accessible, but allows for the vibrational tone of their experience to be conveyed in the words that they write down. In this way, they are creating a container that can hold the medicine of soul. Clever words are wonderful. However, but to write logos, to speak logos, which is the living word, to bring forth what after you release it from your loving bosom has its own heartbeat, has its own breath, has its own life out in the world and holds true to its nature. You need to use your whole body.
Okay, and I have to pop in there for a second. Can I pop in for a sec?
Please.
Just because you have absolutely you've nailed what I experienced when I first came across your words. It was on Facebook, in that world of logos and luminosity we know as Facebook. Honestly, I'm joking, but at the same time, there's deep connectivity there. And I came across your words probably 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And I remember there was a fierce resonance and an invitation to my shadow. I just keep feeling like what you were offering was this banquet of mining the gold of all that we've been torn to pieces in this world of duality, and we've been shamed and tamed. The wildness has been shamed and tamed out of us. And as I was reading your words, it was like every line I just kept lighting up more and more and going, oh my God, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one who feels this way. All of this that has been the grit that's made the pearl in my oyster, all of this trauma and tragedy that you speak of here, you've just put a name to that offering. I felt like you created some kind of energetic umbilicus to me, that as I was reading your words, I was being fed directly into my solar plexus. The disentangling of all of the conditioning from the world that we live in that tries to keep us small and quiet and contained and unremarkable. It was like this, no. And you were like, I could feel you like shaking your finger in the poem, like, don't you dare lay down and die, or don't you dare be small when you can feel this world, rising through you. So I want to ask you on that note, and keep going in the direction you were going in, if I haven't derailed you, but it speaks to me of the sanctity that you bring to our shadow experience, and how you normalized and actually acknowledged that this life walk where we have been taken to our knees, it's when we're down on our knees that we actually start to really see things deeply, really hear things deeply, where the ego layers are stripped off. And it seems to me that your invitation is one that, for people that are awakening, yes, but those that are deep in the dungeon and numb to any of the feelings that they're having, you are like a clarion call. You are like, no, you are not, you are technicolor. So you're not this unicolor being. You're this rainbow of experience, of light. So speak a little bit about the place that, where the poetry began in you and how it shaped and catalyzed your own transition and transmutation as an artist, human.
Yeah, thank you. This is very intense. I always knew I was destined to be a writer. From the time I was a little girl, I was a writer. I had my first poem published when I was 12 in some little newsletter or something like that. There might have been stuff before that in school, but I don't think I counted it if there was. You know, and I remember coming to this crossroads when I was first exploring college, round one, which I would later drop out of and start again later in my life. But college round one, you know, and I remember I felt like I needed to pick between pursuing English as a subject or psychology. And retrospectively, I can see that it didn't really matter which one I was going to pick, because I spiritually counsel people, even though I'm not a psychotherapist and I'm not licensed by the state. That's not the kind of counseling I do. And I write. Had I gotten a psychology degree instead, I would be giving therapy as someone licensed by the state, not free to give the real medicine, because you know, that is mine to disseminate, you know, and would have been writing books. So you know, and this is all the point toward a design. And I want to come back to what you said a little bit earlier, before I go on about the poetry, about normalizing things, about your response when you ran into some of my words out there. That was my response. When I first started, I had gone through so much trauma and grief at one point that I lost my creative spark. The light in my eyes, out. You know, I lost my creative spark. I was consumed with terror and grief. I was fragmented like a shattered mirror. I could not write. I could not, I felt as if I lost IQ points. Parts of my brain were regularly almost shut down. Parts of my nervous system were shutting down. This is the physiology of trauma. And I had been going through series of traumas my whole life before anybody ever told me what trauma was. And I was doing what an unconscious mammal will do when it is traumatized. It attempts to recreate the original trauma so that it can finish disseminating the terror, primal terror energy that fills up the nervous system, you know, and lights up parts of the brain that are made to fight, flight, freeze. And there is a fourth option in trauma, which is
to fawn, where the manipulative part kicks in to actually be in submissive part in order to survive.
There's that too. There is so many levels to this. And so when I first started writing again, it was one of those things. I saw this ad in the back of a paper. I had moved out to the country because I could not handle the noise. I moved out to the middle of nowhere, to this little river town in the middle of rural Pennsylvania, to get away from the buses and the planes and the hustle and the bustle and the empathic overload of being compressed into a space with so many people around me who were so unhappy. I was still looking for the boundaries of my being. I was an empath my whole life. So much of who I thought I was had nothing to do with me. It was what I empathically photocopied, internalized, and did not recognize as not me, because there was not yet a self by the time I was 3. And so life went on this way for decades. For decades. By the time I started to, you know, what some people call waking up, by the time I started to wake up, I had so many people in me, you know, and I myself, you know, had to split into parts in order to make room to hold all these other people. My body expanded to well over 300 pounds. You know, I was just swelled up with the holding of all of this torment, which I had no reason to believe wasn't mine, because it seemed as if it had always been there. And it is normal. It is normal for a human being who is awakening, or a human being who has been traumatized, empathy, not as an emotion, but as a permanent state, is very often likely to be a side effect of trauma at a young age. This creates room to be preyed upon by unconsciousness. You know, there's not really any bad guys here in terms of the subtle levels of this. Your parents being terrified about how they're going to feed you. Your parent resenting you because they're human and they're 23 and you're a screaming 3-year-old who hasn't stopped screaming for 3 days or weeks. You know, what people passing by in church are feeling when they look at you and you're 6. If, you know, this creates openings in the psyche that create these kind of, let's call them, they become permeable. The walls that in most people's minds are solid become permeable, right? They become permeable. There are these little openings and they're subtle, and everybody tells you it's your imagination until you're a certain age. Then it's not your imagination, it's mental illness, right? We have a lot of things that are in play here that have created this captivity. The cages are inside us. They are meticulously installed like Russian nesting dolls in a knotted maze. So when we're talking about what some people would call the shadow side or the darkness, darkness is not synonymous with evil. Right? And I believe it was Mother Mira who said we should never fear evil, because evil, even if in its most horrific forms, is stupid. The extension of my thought on that is there is a divine intelligence in all things. Even you. Even me. And who knew? You know, but, you know, how do I know this? Because there was no way that I would have survived all of the things I've been through, the amount of violence I have been through, the amount of confusion I have been through. Being a medium that was spirited away at 6 years old because I fell into a magnetic torment by one of my ancestors who died in the Holocaust and was trapped in an eternal scream, causing me to turn away from my gift and become completely unconscious, and then just being used as an unconscious tool, because an oracle is an oracle, whether she knows it or not, whether she controls it or not, whether she takes responsibility for it or not, and she gets used. Empathy, while not the same as being an oracle, there's definitely overlapping territory here. And I'm talking about empathy because I know that a lot of the people who would be drawn to being on a call like this, who would be drawn to watching this later, are drawn because they can feel. They can feel. Sensation is not emotion, it's information. But when it doesn't come with a picture, and it doesn't come with a storyline or a narrative, the mind does not recognize it as real. These fragments are pieces of your perception that get separated out. Because why? Because we compartmentalize. We are required by our culture, churches and families of origin, to compartmentalize. This is just what's been passed down. It's been handed down generation to generation. It's socially, politically, financially, and religiously reinforced. And, these are the bars, baby. And they're internalized. So part of my story is that I was raised in a very religious family by people who really, really wanted the best for me and who meant well, but who were also very hurt, very young, and very confused. And I fled from that and attempted to run as far in what I perceive to be the opposite direction as possible, which brings us to this chained in the dungeon metaphor that you've chosen, which I thought was perfect. So I attempted to go as far in the opposite direction of my parents' controlling Christian-based religion as I possibly could. The consequence for the rejection of that was that I would lose my family. I would be kicked out of my family. And I was, for all intents and purposes, displaced after that for a while, with various interventions, some miraculous. Well, really all of them were miraculous. You know, creation wanted me to exist. I couldn't then imagine why, but I'm starting to understand. So from there, you know, I thought I was going in the opposite direction, but I did not yet know the quantum spiraling nature of reality. And so fleeing as far in the opposite direction as I could get, I met the wild woman's divine nemesis, the dark man. And I was just so happy. I thought he was a dark angel larger than life. And he was, kind of. All right. And I followed him deep, deep into the world of shadow. You know, and really, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I didn't know what I was yet, who I was yet. I didn't remember who I have been in other incarnations or who he was to me. You know, the words dark and light didn't mean a damn thing to me, really. I mean, I was like, dark, that's cool. I was kind of into goth then. I was in my early 20s. Dark world, bring it on. And so I went through the dark door. But the truth is, I was in a state of terror and I needed help. And he showed up. And I wrote a piece on this, and you can Google it. It was called 5 Signs Your Soulmate is a Villain. Based on this experience. So I won't get into all the juicy details here. I'll let you read about it. But I went through that experience. I made him the center of my world. He opened me to the world of spirituality. I did not yet make a distinction between what was spiritual and what was holy, for instance, or what was, a lower force, or what was a higher being. None of this was in my frame of reference at that time. It was phenomena, and I wanted me some of that. But the most important thing that relationship taught me, one of the most important things that it taught me, was how to learn from pain. Turning pain into power. And that is what I teach now, although I don't teach it through the mechanics that I learned it by. I had to go through 15 years of processing that, purifying that, pulling the thread, of the truth, the golden shimmering light from a thick fabric of terror, fear, programming, lower forces, things that were wild and woolly, the imagined embodiment of my worst fears, my deepest affects, beyond emotion, deeper than that, beyond the relationship, further than that. He was a symbol for all that I refused to acknowledge in my own being. My power, my magic, my presence, my wildness, my cruelty, my madness, my ecstasy, my sensuality, the strength of will, strength of mind, all of these things that at that time I rejected it all. I felt unloved and unlovable. I was thrown out into a world I was deliberately kept from when I was growing up, like being fed to the wolves. I did not know the context of the world outside of the cult I was raised in. That's the death sentence, right, that you get when you rebel to an extent at which you are unwilling to make amends because you don't want to be there anymore. And I wrote for a while during that time. And then I wrote more. I started to write this very clever, very seductive, very wild, sexy prose. And I won, the contests at my college, and I got the scholarships and all that jazz. But the problem wasn't that I wasn't clever. I've always been clever. The problem was that I did not yet understand the true meaning of my experience. And that is what trauma keeps you from. It keeps you from context, compartmentalizing, fragmenting, keeps you from understanding the context in which your own life is playing out. And it keeps you from understanding the context of the greater world around you. You cannot feel, you cannot witness, you cannot see its living responses to you in real time. Your life is a conversation with greater creation, with the great mystery, but you must have the sensitivity. Your rawness is power. Your pain is supposed to be power. When you are broken, that is the moment where the miracle can take place. That is the moment when it becomes possible for you to be raised from the dead.
Mm-hmm.
So poetry raised me from the dead, is my point.
And it's a beautiful point.
Yeah, thank you, Alison. One of the biggest things that happen is where the spiritual growth and spiritual communities unknowingly, so there's the conscious unconscious, right? Unknowingly tap into the general culture of positivity and light workers, which are magnificent. There has to be the raising of the bar and the point of reference. Somebody has to go to Himalaya and stick that little flag there so that we can look up, right? Absolutely. But the problem is that we tend to shun at one point, either idolize those that have done it, shun our own shadow, which is divorcing ourselves from our own source of power and self-knowledge. And we have to go to these places, to these uncomfortable tightening contractions, to the uterine aesthetics of the entire cosmos, that in order to expand, there has to be a pulse, right? This is how everything moves, this is how everything moves and grows, exactly. And our beautiful friend, wonderful awakened man, we are speaking about wild women and female intelligence, is in all of us and rising. And as Bob has so gracefully exemplified through what I've witnessed of his work and his path. And I'm so eager to see more men like that. We
and
need
Ted too.
We want them. We miss them. Yes.
Yes,
So, when we speak of this wild woman in all of us that needs to be unleashed, because that is our source of ingenuity, and coming from the whether the type, the archetype of dark mother or grace calling, or what I tend to share with you when I say wrestling with angels. We imagine these cherubs, we don't understand the wrestling. The angels can only show us our true strength, and that they deem us valiant, they deem us dignified and larger than life as we know it, as you spoke of, to engage us in that stronghold, right? So what I really appreciate is that you speak of that we're not looking away, and that we're in fact looking so deeply to understand, as this wonderful awakened man, Fred Lamotte, an incredible writer as well, said the darkness is the womb of creation. And that's how we need to go back into that seeming impasse as a passageway, as a vortex of creation, and that narrowing and tightening, unbearable tightening that pushes us into new dimensions, into new worlds. One of the things that I would like to point out, and then ask you for concrete advice, which you have already shared, but to even that, combining the message you've shared, your spirit as well as your path, and to kind of to give an offering, as Pamela said, to people that are listening to us, and then we would like to open the forum for questions, comments, gifts, and things like that. other people's offerings. One of the things that we don't have, for example, love elders. People, and I'm not even talking about teaching sex education and not telling anything about relationships and intimacy. I mean, that's completely, truly conscious, separated from the unconscious, and how we have to bridge them and bring them into the light and integrated and wholesome again together. And that, of course, Noelle and Bob have been as light partners, as models of that, and needed. We also don't have many spiritual elders. What I mean by that, in the culture that is flooded with self-development and 5 steps and things like that, books, which I know you're ironically mentioning, 5 symptoms that your partner is a villain. I know, and you bust that convention and beautifully in that piece, and I tell everybody, please read that. But we don't, and it's hard, for example, to listen to you, and we all, I'm sure, are identifying with this or that stage, with depth of this or that trauma. And there's different stages to this. There's the uncorking. Then the uncorking is so vicious, then, easily anybody could label you with complex PTSD, because your entire psyche is flooded and you're raw and impaled. I mean, anybody breathing on you is painful. And then there's the progressions. And we are not the first one to map the journey. We're not. But I think, and as we have all in this circle of people brought to our attention, something particular is happening in this age. This is not just a hero's journey or heroine's journey. This is not something that it is all of that. We are enacting all of that, but I think we're taking it further with particular, what you spoke of, what Ingerid spoke of, what Noelle and Bob spoke of, and all of our friends and co-creators, that there is a particular recoding, rewiring of collective and personal memory. There's huge transmutation or transfiguration and transformation that's happening. And that there's basically our coding. You speak of wisdom, intellectual, but you say, but I haven't embodied it yet. So there is this embodied knowledge that is emerging through that recoding and transfiguration and transformation that is happening. So in these different stages, from when you get the call, you wrestle with angels and to answer, you get uncorked or unleashed into the world, you break through, and then you're loose and lost. And all the way to the stage when you're wide awake, and how in the world can you operate and function on a daily basis when you're charged. You're in goosebumps all day. I mean, the back of the hair on the back of your neck is standing up, and you're supposed to go to work, in an ecstatic state. How does one do that? And you keep plunging up and down through the new waves. So with that being said, and I'm intentionally kind of expanding that a little bit so that we can all relate at a particular point of entry, at a particular stage of that opening, and how we can support and hold each other with this particular fine-tuning of the 21st century and particular political uprise that we're witnessing. And you mentioned all aspects of our lives: sexual, financial, political leadership, and this and that. So with all this being stretched out and laid out for us, tell us what it means to be a wild woman, to be embodied wilder grace. Tell us how we can live today in these grand transitions in practical ways. And also tell us what you see is your vision of where we're heading with this grand transition.
Yeah. So this is about, right, merging and meshing our animal being and dealing with everything that's in there. Your ancestors, your trauma, your sorrow, your anger. Nothing's off limits here. Nothing's off limits here. If it's there, it's legit. It doesn't matter what your culture says. It doesn't matter how much gaslighting you've had. It doesn't matter if nobody else will acknowledge it. Okay? If it's in you, it's valid. If it's affecting your freedom, your liberation, your happiness, your joy, your freedom, it's real enough, even if it cannot be objectively perceived. Right? Because what's happening is, you are you know, you are playing a video game and you are also inside the video game. Right? So, you know, what's happening when your crackling infinite being, you know, is trying to make room in your animal body for its presence. And in order for that to happen, in order for that space to be opened, you only need one thing: willingness. I am willing. That is all that is necessary to begin. And once that appears, and it will sooner or later, you know, it just has to, because life has a way of bringing you to being willing by the time it's time. One way or another, you will become willing. And when you become willing, things are going to start to rumble. They're going to start to quake. They're going to start to want to be pushed out. Okay, and when it's being pushed out, you know, that means the monsters, you know, the monstrous forms of the things that you did not name, that you refused to acknowledge, that you just cut off and put that suffering behind door number one and pretend it never happened. Guess what? Those doors are going to start to come down. And those monsters and they were monsters at the time that they happened, probably because you were young. Your understanding was different. You didn't have the strength and the context you now have, right? Those doors start to come down, right? And so these monstrous emotions start to rise. Sometimes monstrous memories. If you are shamanically bent, you know, you might really feel and see monstrous forms and shapes, right? This is all initiatory. This is all a reflection of the mythos that informs your current shape, your current unique life, the game board on which you are playing. Right? To be wild means to recognize that this world of stamp and squeeze is artificial. To be wild in the modern world is to recognize profoundly your divine uniqueness and to honor that and to follow that. And your programming, your training, your culture, people who love you and mean well are going to tell you you're illogical and it's not reasonable and people just don't do those things. And don't you want all the stuff? Not that there's anything wrong with stuff, and not that you can't be spiritual and also have lots of stuff. Okay? This isn't about that. This is about, right, the you know, integration, which is why trauma is such a big part of my story. Trauma is fragmenting, right? This is my human experience. I was fragmented in my own humanity. I listened to everything everybody told me was wrong with me, and I tried to adjust, and that resulted in me, because of my capacity that just comes from my quantum algorithm, right? You know, the collection of everything I've ever been, and, you know, makes what is and is not possible now. And I was fragmented into different pieces, you know, that I would just, you know, put that piece in my body and suspend all the other pieces and then switch out depending on what elements I needed. And those elements were cut off from the other elements, right? And this was a very dangerous condition. Right? In a less extreme way. It had to be in an extreme way for me, because it is my work among some of the things that are my work in this world. It is to help people understand integration. If you understand how to integrate aspects of your own humanity, you can then understand what is happening in the process of your eternal nature integrating with your mortal human animal body. And that is when wildness becomes possible, because there are cages everywhere. Not only are there a zillion cages installed in every mind, there are cages at every corner, cameras at every stoplight, right? We have this increasingly dark army kind of vibe going on. and I'm laughing about it, but I'm not laughing about it, okay? There's this kind of divine rumbling joy that emerges from my belly, you know, because I am aware both of my own tiny human context and fear at the thought of a dark army physically encroaching, and the terror of knowing that other people's bodies, you know, are being destroyed by these kinds of forces out in the world, right? This is not something we're not acknowledging. This is not something that we're closing our eyes to or turning our head away from. This is something that if we go deep enough inside ourselves, we will feel those people. Why do you think we're so scared to do it? You think you're scared of what happened to you when you were 4? That's nothing. That's nothing. If you follow your grief, the river of grief, all the way down till it meets the ocean, you will meet all grief. If you follow your abuse all the way back, you will meet all abuse. If you follow anything all the way back, you will meet everything. If you go in deep enough, then when that child on the other side of the world is starving to death, it's not about you paying some kind of psychological price, making yourself look at horrifying images all day as some sort of twisted, useless penance. You have real connectivity. You recognize that that child on the other side of the world who's starving, or those people on the other side of the world who are being, who are just innocent, normal people, being bombed out of their houses, okay? This is some really messed up stuff. How does this happen? It is our collective power externalized. Wildness is about taking back what is yours, not taking what you want, taking what has always been yours, taking what you have been conned out of. You are not stealing. Any battling that you must do, or wrestling with angels, as Mother Mila would put it, that you have to do, right, is because you were confused at another time. You made a bad deal. There are consequences for it. And this is not, and we're not going into the world of religion here. We are talking about cause and effect. The thing is, what we see out in the material world that looks like cause and effect, it is not cause and effect based on what you can see. To know what is causing what you are seeing, you have to go deeper than what you can bear witness to with your human senses, and here's the thing. This is not some secret gift that only a couple special people have. That's just how psychics make money, all right? That's not the way it is. You have this. You have this.
So we have this, and I want to just bounce right in there, and because everything that you're saying right now, I'm feeling it so viscerally and fully. And your story of going through the dark gateway with the dark lord that you were paired with, who showed you shadow and all the things that you had, the dismembered parts of yourself. Perhaps he was your Bluebeard. He was your teacher. Hearing about transmuting that trauma, mining the gold of those wounds and creating wisdom from it. Can you speak to the time that we're living in? Because you have been referring to it with the traumas and the despair we feel in seeing what's happening in Syria, in Aleppo, what is just absolutely numbing to our soul to see the pain of these children and these families. And it's all around us right now. And Mila so beautifully spoke about the uterine nature of this contraction and expansion. And we're all feeling this. Our nervous systems are overloaded. We are all feeling it in our solar plexus. I mean, I've had wild digestive upset for weeks, and I know that it's a retuning of us. It's, in yogic terms, referred to as the Kali Yuga. So we are in this darkest time. We are in the belly of the womb. And as you say, it's not as simple as it seems of this cause and effect. So as we are in this time, this magnificent belly of the whale, in this time of Kali Yuga, and just like you were transformed from that time of all of your trauma, and you found the gifts in it, as we sit here on December 15th, 2016, in this time of such a razor's edge time, can you speak to what the wildness is in each one of our bodies, in our animal bodies, minds, where we can marry the spiritual experience with the physical experience, with being able to be present to what is unfolding right now without blowing all of our circuits, and ways that we can integrate, calm the system. I know when we spoke, you and Mila and I, a week ago, you spoke about being in nature and water and so many very important ways that we can calm the body, that we can come into this point of integration and be healthy and whole for the great turning that is upon us. Because really, we're here to be in community. We need each other. We need to help each other, you know, to hold the light through the dark tunnel of the Kali Yuga. So can you speak a little bit about that, about how we are to be in the world but not of it, and with everything that's happening to be released by way of what we're seeing via the magic of Donald Trump, who is showing us this. We won't even go there. We go there. But all of those that, you know, the mirrors that we are seeing, how can we take care of ourselves right now as we transition through our own intuition of our wildness?
Here's what's going on. The sickness must come out of us as a world. This is what has to happen. This is what is happening. It is not the soul that is being numbed by the seeing of all of this horror, of all of this pain, of all of this suffering. The soul is in fact getting blazing more and more fire than ever. And it is now at a time where all of this is starting. You know, we are coming to a pitch point here. Coming to a pitch point. We all feel it. Our bodies feel it. You know, our souls feel it, right? And how is it that we can be both in this world and not of it? How is it that we can be both here and also beyond the reach of oppressive forces, right? That are enemies of love and wildness, right? That requires the recognition of our eternal selves. And when you go inside and you start to sift through this, you start to face all of these things, you begin to get context. Once again, it comes down to context. When you are in touch with your greater self, your infinite being, which lives in your body, it lives in your body. It's closer than your next breath, okay? It's right there, right? And you don't even know it. Not you. I think that if you're listening to this, you do know it. But, you know, we don't even realize it, right? This gives us a dual context, okay? This is what my fragmentation was made to teach me, among other lessons, okay? That I am here deliberately forged, that this is one of the most important universal necessary things for us to understand and to know and to learn, right? I have many eyes because I was in many pieces, yeah. And so I can both witness my smallness as a tiny human animal, right? My all of my humanness, okay? It is all normal. Your terror, your depression, your anxiety, your empathy, your ecstasy, your desire, all of this is normal. You know, in whatever traditions you may or may not be drawn to, right? There's all these rules, right? And wildness says, be what you are. Not what you were shaped to be by culture, but be what you are actually, right? And so because these oppressive forces are our collective disownment of our own power, right? It has to be addressed collectively. On an individual level, turning our pain into power and pulling back our power, recognizing, see, when you get in touch with the felt sense embodied knowing that of your own eternal spark, right? When you have even one holy instant of that in your body, even once, right? You have a completely new context, because that becomes your authority. And all the oppressive authority figure forces, right? Your inner loyalty that has been programmed into you, it disintegrates in the blaze of your own holiness, That doesn't mean there's not any danger. That doesn't mean, you don't walk up, with your tiny dagger, right, to a whole army, and try to fight on their terms, do you? Well, that you could, but you'll probably die. However, when you are in touch with that eternal spark, and you pull from that eternal spark, you pull back the power that you internally gave away. It's like giving osteoporosis to the machine. Its bones start to get weak. It will crumble. It will fall. It's already started. I have already foreseen, the falling of all of these things. But we are witnessing this. This is not a joke. This is a Kali Yuga. This is the change of ages on this planet. I have seen changes of age on this planet before. This isn't my first one. And this is how it's got to be. This is how it's got to go. The sickness must come out. These oppressive structures, they're all artificial, but everything artificial that we have made, right, has been made in order to contain something what? Something wild, something natural, something divine, real life force. Life force is intelligent. We hear these buzz terms, right? Get back your power, take your power back. But what the hell does that even mean? What does that mean? What does it mean to tell a woman to take back her power after she was abused for 20 years and she can barely ask for a grocery bag or a receipt, right? And we say to her, oh, take back your power. Yeah, and she goes, oh, thank God somebody said that, because that's all I needed, thank you. No, there's a process here. This is alchemy. We are becoming what some people have called the neo-human. That is the human being, merged cohesively with its divine lover, okay? And the divine moves the animal in a greater design. Right? The divine moving all the animals in a greater design. We really think we have so much more control than we have actually. What we're seeing playing out, we look at it, and the truth is, we do have the power to stop it. All of it. Like that. Okay? All of this mythology that a utopia is ridiculous, impossible hippie dream, it's a great palace lie. This, I tell you as a galactic, who comes from such a place, okay? Not as, not as somebody who is not in touch with the pain of this world, with the reality of suffering, because I am. Mine, my whole families, all the people I empathically absorbed, collectively, they represent my entire sphere of influence, every soul I have come here to serve. Collectively, all of those elements have educated me on how to serve. You want to do something? I know you feel helpless sometimes, especially when stuff's happening on the other side of the world, and the people making it happen, are in positions of power, and you're at a desk or whatever your life is. How do we face this? How do we confront this? How are we effective against this? How do we live with the
Okay.
I think that might be her connection.
How do we live with this when it goes like this and we lose her?
Yeah.
Back in. Oh. Beautiful. Well, she may come back. When we had our Zoom call, preliminary call on Saturday, this happened, and I know, right, Mila? She's actually in her RV on her wildness tour in Needles, California.
Yes, she's currently in
There she
I'm
is.
so sorry.
Where are you? There you are.
I am in an RV. Internet, a little sketchy.
Well, I think we're getting close to our time. So thank you so much to everyone that came to the call, everyone at the virtual council fire. Thank you, Mila, for your blazing, holding space and and just your dazzling intellect and beautiful questions that evoked so much from our amazing Alison. I don't know if anybody has any questions or anything to ask.
Well, Pamela, before we do that, because I think there are people who would be willing to stay for a little bit longer.
If people are, sure.
Use this opportunity quickly.
Yeah.
To what we shared before. I said I would like to seed this moment for future potential work. One of the reasons is this. What we managed to do within an hour and a half or so tonight is barely to make an introduction. We haven't had a chance to speak of and the particular alchemical process of which Alison speaks, of how this wild woman is the one that churns her and collective history, and out of trauma and out of pain, she extracts medicine. Mm-hmm. And she has particular, process, an alchemical process that she speaks about of this inner work, transformational work. Mm-hmm. And all three of us, and all four of us originally, but all three of us for sure, have our own different modalities of working with people, doing our own inner work, but also working with people as performers, as teachers, as, facilitators, as elders in making, hopefully. Yes. Because that's what I wished on. So my desire is to see one time at least a way by which we could co-teach a class, co-teach a workshop, or this is what I'm unleashing into the world to have us converge somewhere. And of course, that somewhere most naturally and organically would be to go to the beginning of June 1st through 4th, through to the Sunrise Ranch in Loveland, Colorado, Loveland of all the wonderful places, and join the convergence that Bob and Noel have put together and now traditionally hold, because it has been an incredible experience for me last year. Mm-hmm. And also I think there's a way of coming together and doing this kind of work, of putting together this kind of work. And before we open the floor, then I would like for certain to make sure that Alison tells us kind of right away and directly where we can find her work, yes, her website, where we can find her wildness deck. And I do want to ask Alison that you bring the image. I think you glossed over that too quickly. The image on the front, the cover image of your wildness decks is way, way too potent for this particular gathering. And well, we barely touched on womanhood, and I think there's so much to be said on all the faces, but I want her to show us this image because it's very potent, and also to tell us where we can find her work. We can share of our work as well, and then anything that Bob and Noel want to announce, but most definitely to hear from our people, because at this point I feel I'm cutting myself short for the goodness that people are holding already that has been generated with this conversation. Alison?
Thank you, Mila. I sometimes forget. So my website is thewildnessdeck.com. But my real work is in coaching writers and coaching people who are seeking healing from deep and complex matters through creative processes that allow them to alchemize and integrate what has happened into a greater, truer, wilder life that suits their real nature. So I work with people one-on-one. I help people write their memoirs. I help people write their books. I help spiritual writers, counselors, practitioners, psychotherapists, Reiki healers enhance their practices by learning how to communicate soulfully. And you can get my wildness deck at thewildnessdeck.com. You can also, each month I run a Wild Woman's Council. You can see the one of them right on the cover page at my website. And I run those each month. And I also have an upcoming La Loba moon writing class that will happen in a similar form to this, right online. It's a Wild Women's writing group, you know, and that's coming up in January. It's only offered twice a year. So if that's something that resonates with you, I welcome you to contact me. There are lots of ways to work with me, whether you are looking for something more psychic and shamanic, or you are looking for something that is grounded in, for instance, writing your spiritual memoirs, or wanting to put together a practice because you have become masterful at your modality, and it is time to start bringing forth the people who called you into form. That is my specialty. I specialize in the creation of spiritual content. And what is new, what is brand new about what I am doing is I am now called to begin working retreats, live events, corporate sponsored events. Give me 2 days and I will change your life. And I am very called to that. I am hand making instruments of power. I cannot stop. I'm completely compelled. There is no reason for me to have that if my work will continue to be online. I am telling you, there is wildness and wonderment in the work. So please stay in touch. Read my blog. Also can be found on my website. I am always writing to you. And I look forward to getting to know you more. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Alison.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Pamela, would you like to share, please, of your extraordinary work that you do with singing and teaching, and where people can find you, just so that we know where the website, and of course find all of us on Facebook, and you can contact us this way. But most importantly, Pamela, why don't you share about your...
Yes. My website is www.PamelaJaneGerrand.com, GERRAND.com. That's my music site. And my website that's more meditations, sound healing is www.PamGerrand.com. And I actually had a poem that I wanted to share, but I don't want to take the time. And I have a video of it. It's called Into the Void, and it actually speaks all about everything we've been communing around this council fire with tonight, about going right into the darkness of the womb, where the creatrix is just waiting to feed us the nourishment of our creative fire. And really, the interesting thing is the video was created by Ingerid, who was to be our other guest tonight with her partner, John. So if there's a way, maybe I could even just post the link on Co-Creators Convergence, right, Noel and Bob? Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
you can post it on the Co-Creators Convergence Facebook page.
Okay.
And then I'll ask Bob also to put it when he posts the link to this call, on our website. He can also put that link there.
Right.
And then I could also send it out. We had almost 20 people who said they were coming to this by Eventbrite, so I could email it out to them.
It's a poem, but it's also a meditation, and it is alchemy, and it invites us into the winter, whether we have snow or not. So it feels like it kind of wraps this up into. I'd love to have that as an offering.
That would be great if you send it, Pamela, and we should definitely disseminate. And by all means, like I said, under these names that you see us, Alison Nappi, Mila Popovich, and Pamela Jane Gerrand, you can find us on Facebook. My own work is also of the transformational kind. My practice is called Evolved Leadership with a capitalized ED, because I have an academic and artistic background. And my own work it's a program practice and community that I generated for new leadership for transformational change. And with that being, with the greater democratization of excellence, what I've noticed is that we have extraordinary democratization of excellence that we see from the elderly to the very young children, on all across the board, all across walks of life, while at the same time we're witnessing great crisis of conventional leadership. And that came true 2 years after I started this practice in an explosive way in America. So I've created a program where I work with individuals, with the microcosms, on the meso level with organizations and institutions, as well as a larger, like planetary stewardship programs. And you can find me under milapopovich.com, or you can write to me, milapopovich@gmail.com. And I definitely want to make sure that Bob and Noel will share their information. And now for sure, I cannot wait. Actually, I'm getting anxious to hear from our extraordinary people and to see if, as many as we can share inputs, insights, versus anything that you can offer us with, as much as we can bring in a concise way amongst ourselves in this group. By all means, join us.
Okay, Mila, what I'd like to do is, we're over our time limit. So what I'd like to do is to invite Darlis to tell us about who is going to be on the call next month.
That's good.
And,
Okay, yes.
And after that, what I'd like to do is invite people. We can continue this conversation after that, but, allowing people that, only budgeted 90 minutes for this time, I want to respect their time. So some people may need to jump off, but I would like Darlis to tell us about Richard and what's coming up next month, the third Thursday. So Darlis, can you?
Yes, thank you so much. First, I just wanted to say thank you to all three of you. Wonderful, wonderful ladies. It was great, great information. And boy, I could stay here all night. Next month, we have Richard Yap. He's from Perth, Australia. And he is going to speak to us about communication with the galactic as community, in community. And right before he comes to us, he's actually speaking at a huge event in Australia. He'll come straight from speaking on the same subject at a huge convergence there. And he will be joining us this year at the Co-Creators Convergence. Yay, which is amazing. He just happens to be in America doing he does sacred light journeys, which are amazing. I've been to one in England that makes everything I've done up until this point look like kindergarten. So I actually, right before the convergence, I will be with him in Hawaii and then Mount Shasta, and then we will all come together to CCC. So it's a very exciting time. So I invite everyone to be on the call next month. Ladies, thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Darlis, and thank you.
The date, what is the date?
The date, go ahead, Noel.
Well, what's the third Thursday of January?
Okay.
I have to look on our calendar.
It's always the third Thursday.
19th?
That sounds right.
We don't know what state we're in. How do we know that?
Yeah.
19.
Yes, the 19th.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Is the Co-Creators Convergence this year going to be a week long?
Good question, Janet.
I wish it were.
We've been having conversations about at least extending, having a set time, but then having those that want to stick around doing some other things together.
Well, formally, it's going to be the same length as it was before, June 1 through 4. However, we do have rooms reserved for the day before and for the day after. So, but it will be unstructured time, where you can just, process or do whatever you want, because we just love our community so much. We never want to leave each other. So, but there is another group that's coming in after us, so we couldn't. We have to be out on the 5th, and that's what is difficult. Sunrise is getting very popular now, and we have it booked for this year and for 2018, about the same dates. But getting those dates is getting tougher every time. So that's what we have now. So Janet, you just buzz up there any old time you want to. Stay as long as you want to, but be out on the 6th, okay? So, but I do want to extend, to Alison, just your passion, your beauty, your expressiveness. It did go to my solar plexus, and I just really feel like you just unleashed. I'm just even getting goosebumps just even saying this. Just unleashed so much here for all of us, and just felt your journey very, very deeply. And of course, our beautiful goddesses, Pamela and Mila, thank you so much bringing this beauty to us. This is a little different from what we've had before, but it's so great and so wonderful that I just say, more. So there's never say never. to what these calls can be like. And each one of our members who brings someone, it's just whatever you want it to be. So what I want to do now is just ask one quick question. Do you want me to stop the recording? Because I will let this, we can continue and still have conversation. But I don't even know if Alison is available. So, what do you all think? You got to go? Because there are some people that do need to go, and I understand that. So, okay. Thank you, Kathy, Ted. Love you. Darla, those of you that need to jump off, thank you for being here. And Darla, there was somebody here on the call from Australia, so maybe she'll get to Richard's site. So, okay, are you going to stop the recording? Do you want me to stop the recording?
So, Alison, can you remain with us for a bit longer?
I'm happy to. It's my honor.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes or no?
So, yeah, we can go ahead and let's go ahead and we'll stop the recording just because it's going to be so long. Or is that okay, or do you want me to keep it on?
It's your choice. I mean, I don't know what Pamela feels like.
Pamela, you're muted.
Noelle?
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Just end it here and
Yeah.
then restart it, and you'll have. That's what I do. Like.
Oh, thanks.
Okay,
Shelley. Great idea. Thank you.
Good idea. Then it's not as long.
Okay.
Super. Okay, go ahead and stop
yes,
it.
on Comedy Central, they call this extended coverage. So you can join the rest of our coverage on the worldwide internet.
The outtakes. This is the outtakes.